Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israeli forces aim for lasting control in Gaza, not temporary raids or retreat. Lebanese army confirms Hamas, a second member suspected of launching rockets at Israel in March. And the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres expresses concern over escalating India-Pakistan tensions, urging against military action. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has announced that the upcoming Gaza offensive will be an intensive military operation aimed at defeating Hamas. And in a video posted on X, Netanyahu emphasized that the population in Gaza would be moved for their so-called own protection. He clarified that Israeli soldiers would not carry out temporary raids, but intend to secure lasting control with no retreat from the territory. Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir has reiterated his opposition to any humanitarian aid entering Gaza, even if delivered by the Israeli military. He insists that until all Israeli detainees held by Hamas are released, no aid should be allowed into the enclave. Ben-Gvir has called for the bombing of aid stockpiles in Gaza and the complete shutdown of electricity, water, aiming to pressure Hamas into releasing the detainees. He argues that withholding aid is essential to achieving Israel's objectives in the conflict. Finland's Foreign Minister Lena Valtonen has expressed deep concern over Israel's plans to intensify its military operations in Gaza. And in a post on X, Valtonen reiterated her call for all parties to return to a ceasefire and urged Hamas to immediately release all remaining hostages. She also emphasized the necessity for Israel to ensure unimpeded access for humanitarian aid to Gaza. The European Union has expressed concern over Israel's newly approved military plan to escalate operations in Gaza. EU spokesperson Anwar El-Announi warned it could lead to more casualties and suffering among Palestinians. He also urged Israel to show utmost restraint as Israeli officials signal intentions to permanently seize control of the enclave. And for more analysis, we now move to Hani Saif in our newsroom. Hello, Hani.
Hello, Salma. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll shed more light and we're joined from Cairo by the managing editor of Al-Ahram, Mr. Ashraf Al-Ashri. Mr. Ashri, welcome to Qnews. Sir, what is your opinion on the Israeli occupation's decision to extend military operations in Gaza, trying to secure lasting control and territory?
Good evening to you and to your audiences. So it seems like we are heading to a very catastrophic scenario in the Gaza Strip. The small security cabinet met yesterday, decided to have a full occupation of Gaza and call up the more of resources and also Itmar Damil stated that to transect the Gaza Strip in full to 4 portions and a full control of the Gaza Strip by the Israeli army, that would lead to displacement of the population to the south, and to have Israeli presence in the Strip to the maximum time, and the idea of to negotiate with Hamas is unacceptable now. And it seems that they wish to stay in the Gaza Strip indefinitely, and they're not going to go out of from the Gaza Strip as reported by the Israeli media. And there is a plan for the delivering the food aids by signing organizations and signed for distributing the food to give one or meals to each family. So that controlling the distribution of the food, and according to the plan, is to reoccupy once again the Gaza Strip by the Israeli hands, as stated before the Israeli withdrawal in Sharon's era, the former Prime Minister, in 2005. The catastrophic situation is ahead of us, and I think that the occupations will be following Trump's visit to the region.
Mm-hmm.
As Israel will going to be busy targeting the Houthis, as we've noticed in a few minutes, that the airstrikes hit the western south of the Yemen in Hudaydiyah.
So what do you make of the public opinion? Do you think the Israeli public will turn against Netanyahu because of the decision to extend the military?
Certainly. So, as from within it's Netanyahu's leaders to occupy Gaza, as reported previously, that the issue of the captives that has less priority, and that there are more on his plate compared to the return of the captives. And so the matter will be staying in order to invade, to be held before the court due to the bribe indictment, and Netanyahu, along with the far right, is behaving based on a new scenario to stay in the Gaza Strip in order to be held before the court, in order to change the pressure within Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And the matter or the issue of detainees might be solved within months or more weeks. So most importantly for Netanyahu is to complete the destruction and the ongoing operations, military operations in the Gaza Strip.
Mr. Ashri, then what do you think the international community will be doing, or how will the international community even react to Israel's decision to prolong the military campaign in the Gaza Strip?
The international community issued many statements lately from the European Union rejecting this military operation, and the UN Secretary General yesterday and the day before issued a statement issued by the United rejecting the starvation policy of Israel and the delivery of the food aids by authorities affiliated to the Israeli occupation, and the distribution of food should be going through the United Nations organizations, and also rejecting the to reoccupy the Gaza Strip, and that as this would threaten the lives of 2.4 million of the population, and in the meantime to avoid any process of calming in the Gaza Strip in this time. So unfortunately the international community's position is weak, and we cannot rely on unless we have only one solution by the American pressures. It's only one opportunity that is lost to prevent the military invasions only through the United States.
So you think that the US administration can put pressure on Netanyahu to end the war on Gaza soon? Or is the Israeli decision to prolong the offensive in Gaza done with the support and the blessings of the US administration?
I think that the US did not give a green light for Benjamin Netanyahu to prolong the military operation in the Gaza Strip, as this would contradict with Trump's statement calling for spreading the peace in the Middle East. And at the same time, Netanyahu is using this operation and the approval by the security cabinet as a paper or a bargain chip to pressure more on Hamas, particularly as Israel left an open door for any deal by new conditions by return until he returns the hostages. So the US would not allow any more of escalation. So there will have some sort of door or an open door for a new opportunities to pressure against or a pressure upon Israel, and this is going to be the only hope for Gaza.
So as we speak, American and Israeli forces are striking locations in Yemen. What do you make of that?
This matter was expected, and it was expected to do this airstrikes in the morning of today. So, as a retaliation of a serial step taken by the Houthis attacking the Ben Gurion airport, that made more than 3 million Israelis to flee to the shelters. So therefore there was some sort of a coordination between Israel and America to strike some posts in areas controlled by the Houthis. As we've seen, 30 Israeli air strikes posts controlled by the Houthis. Therefore, this will continue for more days and isn't going to be stopped. But it is expected for the Houthis to retaliate by launching ballistic missiles, maybe in the dome or in the few hours to come, as a retaliation for the Israeli-American airstrikes that targeted areas controlled by the Houthis.
From Cairo, that was the managing editor of Al-Ahram, Mr. Ashraf Al-Ashri. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us here on Q News. Now, as we were saying moments ago, Houthi media reported that Israeli and American airstrikes have targeted sites in Hodeidah, Yemen, with 6 airstrikes specifically hitting the Hodeidah port in the southwest of the country, while additional strikes have targeted sites in the Abajil area to the north of Hodeidah. Axios, quoting a U.S. official, states that the Israeli airstrikes on sites in Yemen were coordinated with Washington. Israeli media further reports that 30 Israeli fighter jets participated in the attack on Yemen. Axios also quoted the U.S. official stating that Israel had notified the United States ahead of the attack on the Houthis. Now we go back to Salma Al-Fay in our studio. Salma.
Thank you, Hani. Israel's political and military leaders have approved plans to expand the Gaza offensive. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's security cabinet unanimously approved plans to call up reservists and put the Israeli military in charge of food and other vital supplies to the 2.3 million people suffering under its blockade of the Palestinian territory. Newswires reported unnamed Israeli officials suggesting that the plans include the conquest and the occupation of the entire Gaza Strip. Reuters reported the expanded offensive could go as far as seizing the entire enclave. A heated confrontation has erupted during a meeting between the Israeli Chief of General Staff, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, and 2 far-right cabinet ministers over the continuation of the military operation in Gaza. According to Israel's public broadcaster Kan, the dispute intensified when National Security Minister Ben Gvir and Minister for Settlement Orit Struk argued that no aid should be sent to Palestinians in Gaza. In response, Zamir reportedly shouted at the ministers, warning that their position was dangerous and violated international law. He emphasized the need to avoid starving the Strip, stressing the potential risks to Israel's security. Zamir also reiterated his concerns directly to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, but the cabinet ultimately decided to continue the blockade, which has led to a humanitarian crisis affecting about 2.3 million Palestinians since its imposition in early March. Hamas has rejected Israel's proposed plan to bypass international aid agencies and directly distribute supplies within Gaza's militarized zones. The group condemned the plan as an attempt to use aid as a tool of political blackmail, insisting that aid should be managed by competent international or local organizations, not manipulated for political purposes. Hamas described the plan as a violation of international law, accusing Israel of extending a policy of starvation and distraction and using it to delay action on what it called crimes of genocide. The group urged the international community to reject what it called false occupation narratives and to push for the immediate lifting of the blockade to allow food and medical aid to flow under UN supervision, free from military or political interference. Gaza's government media office has strongly rejected Israel's proposed plan to distribute humanitarian aid through centers controlled by the Israeli occupation military, calling it a violation of humanitarian principles and an effort to perpetuate the blockade. The office argued that the new mechanism, which would impose arbitrary security conditions on aid distribution, transforms humanitarian efforts into tools for political blackmail and collective punishment. It emphasized that Israel, as an occupying force, cannot act as a neutral mediator for aid. In a statement, the office called for the immediate lifting of the blockade, the reopening of crossings, and the unrestricted entry of aid, stressing that Gaza requires action, not further promises. It also reiterated that the ongoing occupation continues to violate the human dignity of Palestinians every day. The Lebanese army has confirmed that Hamas has handed over a second member suspected of launching rockets towards Israel in March. The individual, reportedly based in Lebanon, is now under investigation supervised by the judiciary. A first suspect was turned over on Sunday. Spanish Foreign Minister José Manuel Albares has condemned Israel's actions in the Syrian Golan Heights. In a post on X, Albares stated that the new occupation attacks on Syria only contribute to further destabilization in the region. Albares called on the Israeli government to cease these actions, emphasizing the need for stability and peace in the area. U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he had a productive call with the Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan on Monday about topics including the war in Ukraine and issues involving Syria and Gaza. Trump announced that the Turkish President Erdogan will visit Washington and that he has also been invited to Turkey. Trump emphasized his eagerness to cooperate with Erdogan to bring an end to the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, describing it as both unnecessary and deadly. And UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has voiced deep concern over escalating tensions between India and Pakistan, warning against military confrontation following the deadly April 22nd attack in Pahalgam. Guterres condemned the targeting of the civilians and urged both nations to exercise maximum restraint, offering UN support for peaceful de-escalation. His remarks come as Pakistan conducted a second missile test in 3 days amid fears of an Indian incursion. Credit agency Moody's also warned that the Kashmir standoff could derail Pakistan's fragile economic recovery. And Pakistan has successfully conducted a surface-to-surface missile test as part of an ongoing military exercise. According to Bloomberg news agency, the Inter-Services Public Relations stated that the test aims to ensure the preparedness of the forces and to verify technical parameters. And official media in Islamabad reported that Indian forces opened fire overnight in 6 sectors along the line of control in Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistani security sources stated that Indian forces unjustifiably targeted several Pakistani military positions across multiple sectors along the line of control, prompting a retaliatory response from the Pakistan Army. The sources added that the Pakistani army is on high alert and is determined to respond appropriately to any form of aggression.
ज्वाइंट चेक पोस्ट गंडा सिंह वाला और सुलेमान की पर भी मुनाकिद की जाती हैं। इस वक्त देखिए क्या छोटे क्या बड़े क्या औरतें क्या बच्चे सब
Moody's has warned that escalating tensions over Kashmir could hinder Pakistan's economic reforms and negatively impact its $350 billion economy, which is recovering after a $7 billion IMF bailout. The agency noted that sustained conflict with India could impede growth and fiscal consolidation, delaying macroeconomic stability. India's economy is expected to remain stable due to minimal economic ties with Pakistan. Increased defense spending could affect its fiscal strength. Moody's does not foresee a full-scale military conflict, but emphasizes that ongoing tensions could strain Pakistan's foreign exchange reserves and access to external financing. And moments ago, Houthi media reported that Israeli and American airstrikes have targeted sites in Hodeidah, Yemen, with 6 airstrikes specifically hitting the Hodeidah port in the southwest of the country, while additional strikes have targeted sites in the Bajil area to the north of Hodeidah. Axios, quoting a U.S. official, states that the Israeli airstrikes on sites in Yemen were coordinated with Washington. Israeli media further reports that 30 Israeli fighter jets participated in the attack on Yemen. Axios also quoted the U.S. official, stating that Israel had notified the United States ahead of the attack on the Houthis. And that brings us to the end of our news bulletin, and here's what we have been covering. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israeli forces aim for lasting control in Gaza, not temporary raids or retreat. The Lebanese army confirms Hamas has handed over a second member suspected of launching rockets at Israel in March. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres expresses concern over escalating India-Pakistan tensions, urging against military action. And this concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. And thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Q News.